The smell reached the intake desk before she did. Captain Robert Hayes had been a doctor for 20 years, a country physician in rural Pennsylvania before the war. He knew the smell of infection, knew the difference between clean wounds and dirty ones, between flesh that would heal and flesh that was already dying. This was different. This was rot. Deep, bacterial, unstoppable rot. The kind that announced itself 3 steps ahead, that made grown men turn their heads and cover their mouths. The kind that meant you were already too late. Hayes looked up from his paperwork, saw the Soviet guard first, standing 3 steps back from the intake line, breathing through his sleeve. Saw the group of 14 German prisoners shuffling forward in the April rain. 13 men, older, haggard, defeated. Their uniforms hung loose, their eyes were empty. And one girl, she was at the back of the line, moving slowly, dragging something behind her. Hayes set down his pen. The girl was on crutches, rough wooden ones, the kind you made yourself when there was nothing else. Her left leg hung useless, the trouser fabric stuck to something wet. She moved like someone who had learned to walk through pain. One crutch forward, swing the good leg, drag the bad one, repeat. The smell grew stronger with every step. Hayes stood, walked toward her. The Soviet guard stepped aside gratefully, glad to hand off the problem. The other prisoners moved past, processed by the intake clerk. Hayes barely noticed them. He stopped 2 feet from the girl. She looked up. 18 years old, maybe 19. Pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, cheekbones too sharp from hunger. Her hair was tied back in a braid that had come loose days ago. Her uniform, Auxiliary Corps, Communications Division, was stained with mud and God knows what else. But it was her eyes that stopped him. They were not the eyes of someone who had given up. They were the eyes of someone who knew that falling meant staying down forever, who had walked on a rotting leg for weeks because the alternative was death. Hayes had seen those eyes before, in soldiers who crawled back to the line with their guts hanging out, in pilots who landed burning planes because their crew was still inside, in men who chose to keep breathing when every logical part of them said stop. He had never seen them in an 18-year-old girl. "Sit," he said in broken German. "Bitte, sit." She did not move, just stared at him, waiting for permission to collapse. Hayes gestured to a wooden crate near the medical tent. She nodded once, limped over, lowered herself down with the careful control of someone who knew their body was one wrong move from betraying them. Hayes knelt, pulled out his field knife. The girl flinched but did not pull away. "I need to see," he said. "Your leg. Verstehen?" She nodded. He cut the fabric away, slowly. The cloth was stuck to the skin beneath with dried fluid and fresh seepage. When it came free, the smell hit him like a fist. Gas gangrene. He had seen it twice before. Once in North Africa, a soldier who stepped on a landmine. Once in France, a lieutenant who got shrapnel in the thigh and did not evacuate fast enough. Both times, the diagnosis came too late. Both times, the men died screaming. The girl's calf was mottled grey and black, swollen tight. The skin had a wet sheen to it, glistening under the overcast sky. There were patches where tissue had begun to liquefy, where the bacteria were eating through muscle and fascia, producing gas as they multiplied. Hayes pressed lightly near her ankle. Crackle. The sound of gas trapped under skin. The signature of clostridial infection. The bacteria that thrived in dead tissue. The bacteria that did not stop until you cut them out or died trying. The girl did not make a sound. Hayes looked up at her. "How long?" She blinked. processed the English, answered in German. 3 Wochen, vielleicht 4. 3 weeks, maybe 4. Treatment? She shook her head. Keine Medikamente, keine saubere Verbände. No medicine. No clean bandages. How far did you walk? She hesitated, then spoke slowly, choosing words he might understand. Eine Woche. Zu Fuß. After truck. Kaputt. 1 week. On foot. After the truck broke down. Hayes closed his eyes, breathed through his mouth. The infection should have killed her days ago. Septic shock. Organ failure. A ditch somewhere between the Elbe and this camp. But she was here. Conscious. Upright. He opened his eyes, looked at her face again. She was 18 years old. His daughter was 18 years old. Back home in Pennsylvania. Safe. Healthy. Probably complaining about rationing or her college entrance exams or boys who did not call when they said they would. This girl had walked for a week on a rotting leg because stopping meant death. Hayes made the decision in that moment, not because of orders, not because of protocol, not because she was a prisoner or an enemy or a child, because she was a person, and she was 18, and he was a doctor. I'm Captain Hayes, he said in English. I'm going to help you. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. She nodded. The medical tent was not designed for surgery. It was designed for triage, for stabilizing the dying long enough to evacuate them somewhere with actual equipment, with actual doctors who specialized in trauma, with blood supplies and surgical suites and anesthesiologists who knew what they were doing. Hayes had none of that. What he had was a folding table, 2 cots, a field surgery kit that was supposed to handle basic procedures like removing shrapnel or setting fractures, a bottle of ether that might last 90 minutes if he was conservative, and a corporal named James Walker who served as his medic, his nurse, and his assistant, depending on what the day required. Walker was 24, good hands, steady nerves. He had seen enough in the past year to know when something was serious. He took one look at the girl's leg and said, Jesus Christ.
Gas gangrene, Hayes said. Advanced stage. How long does she have? 12 hours, maybe 24 if we're lucky. Walker looked at Hayes. We don't have the equipment for this. I know. We don't have blood for transfusion. I know. We don't even have a proper surgical suite. I know. Walker waited, then asked the question that mattered. Are we doing this anyway? Hayes did not answer immediately. He walked to the tent entrance, looked out at the processing center.
At the 13 German prisoners being assigned to barracks, at the Soviet guards lighting cigarettes, at the American officers arguing over paperwork, at the girl sitting on the crate, waiting, not complaining, not begging, just waiting. Yes, Hayes said, we're doing this. The major's going to lose his mind. Probably. She's a POW, she's German, she's 18 years old, Hayes said, and if we don't amputate in the next 12 hours, she's dead. Walker nodded slowly. Okay, I'll prep the tent. Hayes turned. And Walker? Sir? Make sure we have enough ether. I don't want her waking up in the middle of this. Walker's face went pale, but he nodded. Major Douglas Grant was not a cruel man. He was a practical man, a logistics officer who had spent the war coordinating supply routes and refugee movements, who understood that resources were finite and decisions had consequences. He listened to Hayes's request without interrupting. Then he set down his coffee and said, No. She'll die, Hayes said. She's a prisoner of war. She gets standard care. Standard care is triage. This requires amputation. Grant leaned back in his chair. Captain, do you know how many wounded we processed through here last month? 270. Do you know how many supplies we have left? Not enough. Do you know how many questions I'll get from Washington if a German POW dies on an operating table while American soldiers are being evacuated to field hospitals? She's not a combatant. She's an auxiliary clerk, 18 years old. She's the enemy. Hayes felt something tighten in his chest. She's a kid. Grant's expression did not change. I understand your impulse, Captain, I do. But we have limited medical resources, limited personnel, limited time. We cannot afford to perform major surgery on a German prisoner when we have American soldiers who need care. There are no American soldiers here who need amputation. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Grant stood, walked to the window, looked out at the rain. The point, Captain, is that if she dies on your table, I will have to write a report, and that report will ask why we used valuable supplies and personnel on an enemy POW instead of evacuating her to a German facility, and I will not have a good answer. Hayes stared at him. So we let her die? We follow protocol. Protocol says she gets the same standard of care as anyone else. I'm a doctor. My standard of care is to save lives. Grant turned. Even enemy lives? Especially enemy lives. That's the whole point of the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention also says POWs are the responsibility of their capturing power. The Soviets captured her. Let them handle it. The Soviets handed her to us. Then we hand her to the Germans. There are no functioning German medical facilities within 50 miles. She'll be dead before we find one. Grant rubbed his face, sighed. Captain Hayes, you're a good doctor. You've saved a lot of lives. But you need to understand something. This war is almost over. We're weeks away from total German surrender, maybe days. And when that happens, we're going to have tens of thousands of POWs to process. Tens of thousands of refugees, displaced persons, orphans, people who need food, shelter, medical care. We can't save everyone. I'm not asking to save everyone. I'm asking to save one girl. Why her? Hayes did not have a good answer. Because she was young? Because she reminded him of his daughter? Because she walked on a rotting leg for a week and never once asked for help? Because she was a person and that should be enough? He said the only thing he could. Because I can. Grant looked at him for a long time. Then he said, if you do this, you do it on your own authority. You write the order. You sign it. You take responsibility. And if she dies, that's on you. Understood? Hayes nodded. Understood.
And Captain? Sir? If this goes wrong, I can't protect you. I know. Grant sat back down, picked up his coffee. Then do what you think is right, and God help you if you're wrong. Hayes returned to the medical tent, found the girl still sitting on the crate, still upright, waiting for permission to stop fighting. Walker was boiling instruments in a steel pot, setting up lamps, laying out towels, moving with the efficient precision of someone who had done this 100 times before. Hayes approached the girl, knelt so they were eye level. I need to remove your leg, he said in broken German. Below the knee. Verstehen? She looked at him, did not flinch. Ich sterbe. Will I die? Hayes wanted to lie, wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that modern medicine was a miracle, that she would survive and recover and go home to whatever was left of her life. But he had learned a long time ago that soldiers could smell lies, that they trusted you more when you told them the truth, even when the truth was terrible. I don't know, he said. Maybe. The surgery is dangerous. You've lost a lot of blood. You're malnourished. You're dehydrated. The infection has spread. If I don't operate, you'll die within days. If I do operate, you might die on the table, or after, from shock, from blood loss, from complications I can't predict. She listened. Processed, then asked, and when ich lebe? And if I live? Hayes hesitated. If you live, you'll have one leg. You'll need crutches, or a prosthetic if you can find one. Your life will be harder. Smaller, different, she nodded. Looked down at her ruined leg, then back at Hayes. Kann ich einen Brief schreiben? She asked. Vorher? Can I write a letter? Before? Hayes felt something crack inside his chest. Yes, he said. Of course. Walker handed her a pencil and a scrap of paper.
She took them with trembling hands, bent over the paper, wrote slowly, carefully, in neat script that shook at the edges. 4 lines. She folded the paper twice, held it out to Hayes. Für meinen Vater, she said, wenn ich sterbe. For my father, if I die. Hayes took the letter. Did not ask who her father was. Did not ask if he was alive. Did not ask what it said. He put it in his jacket pocket. I'll make sure he gets it. She nodded, then asked one more question. Wie ist Ihr Name? What is your name? Robert Hayes. Ich bin Catherine, she said. Kate. Hello, Kate. Danke, Dr. Hayes. He did not know what to say, so he just nodded. Walker approached. We're ready, sir. Hayes stood, looked at his watch. 1400 hours, April 18th, 1945. Let's begin, he said. They carried Kate into the tent on a stretcher, transferred her to the table. Hayes strapped the ether mask over her nose and mouth, told her to breathe slowly, to count backward from 10. She made it to 7 before her eyes closed. Hayes picked up the scalpel, marked the cut line 4 inches below the knee, then looked at Walker. You ever done this before, sir? Walker asked quietly. Once, Hayes said. North Africa. The patient lived for 3 days, then died from shock. What are her odds? 30%, if we're lucky. Walker swallowed. And if we're not? Hayes did not answer. He pressed the scalpel to Kate's skin. Record the time, he said. 1400 hours. Amputation begins. And he cut. The smell that rose from the incision was worse than anything Hayes had encountered, worse than gangrene in isolation. This was tissue that had been dying for weeks. Muscle turned to grey paste. Blood vessels collapsed and clotted. Fascia dissolved into something that looked like rotten meat. Hayes worked methodically, cutting through layers, clamping blood vessels, tying off arteries, separating healthy tissue from dead. But the deeper he cut, the more he realized the infection had spread further than he thought. He was going to have to go higher, not 4 inches below the knee, 6, maybe 7. Removing not just the lower leg, but part of the calf muscle, because leaving any dead tissue behind meant the infection would restart within days. Walker, he said, I need to revise the cut line. Walker looked at the exposed tissue, saw what Hayes saw. Sir, that's going to remove a lot of muscle. If I don't remove it all, she dies anyway. She's already lost so much blood. I know. Hayes repositioned the scalpel, marked a new line, higher, more invasive. Then he cut again. The surgery took 1 hour and 45 minutes, 90 minutes of cutting, clamping, cauterizing, separating bone from soft tissue, using a surgical saw to cut through the tibia and fibula. The sound filled the tent, a grinding metallic scrape that made Walker turn his head. Hayes did not turn his head. He just kept cutting. When the bone was severed, he smoothed the edges with a rasp, folded the remaining muscle and skin over the stump, began suturing. He used heavy thread, tight stitches, because the wound would be under tension as it healed, and any gap would invite infection back in. The final stitch went in at 15:45 hours. Hayes stepped back, wiped his hands, checked Kate's pulse. It was there, faint, thready, but there. Keep her on her side, he told Walker. Monitor her breathing. Call me immediately if her color changes. Walker nodded. Yes, sir. Hayes walked outside, sat on an empty crate, stared at the rain. His hands were shaking. He had just cut off an 18-year-old girl's leg. An enemy POW, someone he met 3 hours ago, someone whose name he barely knew. He thought about his daughter, safe at home, whole, healthy. He thought about Kate's letter,
folded in his pocket, written to a father who might already be dead. He thought about the choice he made to save one life when the world was full of death. He did not know if it was the right choice. He just knew it was the only choice he could live with. Inside the tent, Kate breathed. Unconscious, one-legged, alive. For now. 3 hours later, Kate opened her eyes. Hayes was sitting on a stool beside the cot. He had not meant to fall asleep.
but exhaustion had taken him somewhere between checking her pulse for the 15th time and watching the rain through the tent flap. He jerked awake when she moved. Her eyes were open, staring at the canvas ceiling, not focused, not entirely present, but conscious. Walker appeared at Hayes's shoulder. "Sir, she's awake." Hayes leaned forward. "Kate?" No response, just that empty stare at the ceiling. Then her eyes shifted, moved down, to the blanket covering her body, to the place where her left leg should have been, to the flat space where nothing was. She did not cry, did not scream, did not make a sound. She just closed her eyes again. Hayes watched her face, waiting for something: grief, anger, terror. The reactions he had seen in soldiers who woke up missing pieces of themselves. The bargaining, the denial, the rage at God or fate or the doctor who saved them. Kate gave him nothing, just closed eyes, steady breathing, the expression of someone who had already accepted the worst before it happened. "Kate," Hayes said quietly, can you hear me?" "Nothing." He checked her pulse, still weak, still thready, but regular. He checked the stump, some seepage through the bandages, normal, no bright red blood, no arterial bleeding, no smell. That last part was the most important. If the gangrene was truly gone, the smell would not come back. If it did come back, then the infection was deeper than he thought. And the only option left was a higher amputation or palliative care. Hayes stood, spoke to Walker. "Keep her comfortable, monitor the wound. If the fever spikes above 103, wake me immediately." Walker nodded. "Yes, sir." Hayes walked to the tent entrance, stopped, turned back. Kate's eyes were still closed, but he could see her breathing, could see her chest rise and fall, could see the muscle tension in her jaw, the way her right hand gripped the edge of the blanket. She was not asleep. She was choosing not to look at what she had become. Hayes understood. He had seen it before. The moment when a soldier realizes that the war has taken something permanent, something that will not grow back, something that will follow them home. He left her to that realization. There was nothing he could say that would make it better. The first day was fever. It came in waves. Kate's temperature spiked to 102, then dropped, then spiked again. Hayes treated it with cold compresses and aspirin, with water forced between her lips in small sips, with vigilance. She drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes her eyes opened, sometimes they stayed shut. She never spoke. On the second day, she vomited. Twice. A side effect of the ether, of the trauma, of a body trying to process what had been done to it. Walker held her upright. Hayes held a basin. She retched until there was nothing left, then dry heaved until her ribs ached. When it was over, she collapsed back onto the cot, eyes closed, face pale. Hayes wiped her mouth with a damp cloth. "You need to drink," he said in German. "Trinken, bitter." She did not respond. He held the cup to her lips anyway, tipped it, let water touch her mouth. She swallowed reflexively, then turned her head away. Hayes set the cup down, looked at Walker. She's shutting down. She's in shock, sir. I know, but if she doesn't eat, doesn't drink, doesn't engage. Hayes did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. They had both seen soldiers die from wounds that should not have killed them, because they gave up, because the fight left them, because surviving was harder than dying. Hayes checked the stump again. Still no infection, still healing. The flesh was pink, the stitches were holding, the tissue was regenerating. Kate's body was doing its job, but her mind had gone somewhere else. On the third day, the fever broke. Hayes checked her temperature at 0600 hours, 99.1, almost normal. He exhaled, allowed himself the smallest moment of relief. Walker brought breakfast, weak broth, a piece of bread. Hayes set it on the table beside Kate's cot. "Essen," he said, you need to eat." Kate's eyes opened, looked at the food, then at Hayes, then at the ceiling. "9," she said quietly. No, it was the first word she had spoken since the surgery. Hayes sat down on the stool. "If you don't eat, you'll die. The surgery won't matter. The amputation won't matter. You'll die from malnutrition and weakness. Is that what you want?" She did not answer. Hayes tried again. "You survived 3 weeks on a rotting leg. You survived the surgery. You survived the fever. Don't quit now." Still nothing. Hayes felt frustration rising, then pushed it down. She was 18. She had lost her leg, her family, her country, everything that made her who she was. Of course she did not want to eat. He stood, walked to the tent entrance, stood with his back to her. "I had a daughter," he said in English, knowing she would not understand the words, but needing to say them anyway. "She's 18, like you, safe at home, healthy. She's never known hunger, never known war, never walked on a rotting leg because stopping meant death." He paused. "I don't know why I saved you. Maybe because you reminded me of her. Maybe because you were too young to die. Maybe because I'm a doctor, and that's what I do." Another pause. "But I didn't cut off your leg just so you could die anyway. So eat the damn food, Kate, or don't. But if you're going to quit, at least have the decency to tell me so I can stop wasting my time." He walked out of the tent. Behind him, silence. Then the soft sound of someone picking up a spoon. On the 4th day, Kate spoke. Hayes was changing the bandages, unwrapping the old dressing, inspecting the stump. The wound was healing well, better than expected. The stitches were tight, the tissue was closing, no signs of necrosis, no smell. He was applying fresh gauze when Kate said, "Mein Bein, es ist wirklich weg, my leg." "It is really gone?" Hayes looked up, met her eyes. "Yes," she nodded slowly, processing. "Und die Infektion?" "And the infection?" "I think it's gone, but we won't know for certain for another week." She looked down at the stump, at the place where her left leg used to be. Hayes watched her face, waiting for the breakdown, the tears, the collapse. It did not come. Instead, she said quietly, "Danke." "Thank you." Hayes felt something twist in his chest. "You don't need to thank me. Sie haben mein Leben gerettet." "You saved my life." Hayes finished wrapping the bandage, secured it. "You saved your own life. You walked on that leg for a week. You stayed conscious. You didn't give up." "I just removed the part that was already dead." Kate looked at him. "Warum?" "Why?" Hayes did not know how to answer. "Because you were dying? Because I had the skill to help? Because letting you die felt like surrender?" He settled for the truth. "Because I could." Kate's eyes searched his face, looking for something. Doubt, maybe. Regret. The realization that saving her had been a mistake. She must have found something else. Because she nodded, then turned her face to the tent wall. The conversation was over. That night, Major Grant came to the medical tent. Hayes was sitting outside, smoking a cigarette he had bummed off Walker, watching the stars through breaks in the clouds. Grant stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "How's the patient?" "Stable. The infection is clearing. The stump is healing." "Good. Then we can transfer her." Hayes looked up. "Transfer her where?" "To a displaced persons facility or a German POW camp. We're not equipped for long-term medical care." She can't walk." "Then she can use crutches." "She just had a major amputation 4 days ago. She's malnourished, dehydrated, weak. Moving her now would kill her." Grant sighed. "Captain, we've been through this. She's a prisoner of war. She's not our responsibility." "She became my responsibility when I cut off her leg." "That was your choice, not mine." Hayes stood, faced Grant directly. "You're right. It was my choice. And I'm telling you, as the physician responsible for her care, that moving her in her current condition would constitute negligence, possibly manslaughter." Grant's jaw tightened. "Are you threatening me, Captain?" "I'm informing you of medical reality. If you move her and she dies, I will report it, and you will answer for it." They stared at each other. 2 officers, 2 different kinds of duty. Grant spoke first. "How long does she need?" "Minimum 2 weeks, preferably a month." "We don't have a month." "Then find a facility that does, one with medical staff, with resources, with a plan for rehabilitation." "She's German. She's 18. She's the enemy." Hayes felt something snap inside him. "She's a person, and I just cut off her leg to save her life. That makes her my responsibility, not yours, mine. So unless you're ordering me to kill her, she stays here until I say she's stable enough to move." Grant's expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "You're putting a lot on the line for one girl." "I know. She's not going to thank you. Her country lost. Her family's probably dead. She has no home to go back to." "You gave her a life she doesn't want." "Maybe, but it's her life, not mine, not yours, and she gets to decide what to do with it." Grant looked past Hayes, at the medical tent, at the shadow of a girl lying on a cot inside. "Fine," he said. She can stay for now. "But Captain?" "Sir?" "If this comes back on me, I'll make sure it comes back on you twice as hard." "Understood." Grant walked away, hands still in his pockets, shoulders tense. Hayes sat back down, finished his cigarette, then went back inside the tent. Kate was awake, looking at the ceiling. "Did you understand any of that?" Hayes asked. She shook her head. "9. But I know you were fighting for me." Hayes did not confirm or deny. "You should sleep." "I cannot sleep." "Why not?" She hesitated, then said, "Because when I sleep, I dream I still have 2 legs, and when I wake up, I lose it again." Hayes had no response to that. He sat down on the stool. "Tell me about your family." Kate's eyes closed. "Warum?" "Because I want to know." She was quiet for a long time. Then she began to speak. Her father was a postal clerk. Her mother was a school teacher. They lived in Potsdam, a small apartment, not much, but enough. Her brother Heinrich was 2 years older. Drafted in 1942, sent to the Eastern Front, killed in action in 1943. They never got the body, just a letter from his commanding officer, brief, formal, apologetic. Her mother died the following winter. Pneumonia, no medicine, no hospital beds. Just a cough that turned into a rattle that turned into silence. Her father tried to keep working, keep living, but when the Soviet army entered Potsdam in April 1945, he disappeared. Kate did not know if he fled, if he was arrested, if he was killed. She did not expect to find out. In 1944, when Kate was 17, she was recruited into the Nachrichtenhelferin, the female auxiliary communications course. They needed operators, switchboard clerks, message relays, girls who could follow orders and keep secrets. Kate was good at both. She worked in a regional headquarters near Berlin, operating telephone lines, relaying coded messages, managing communication logs. It was not combat duty, but it was essential. And by 1945, the German military was so depleted that auxiliary units were being moved closer to the front lines. In early April, her unit evacuated from Berlin, supposed to move west toward American lines. Surrender was safer with the Americans than with the Soviets, but the roads were chaos. Refugees, broken vehicles, no clear command. Somewhere during that retreat, Kate injured her leg. She did not remember the exact moment, just stepping off a truck, catching her boot on something sharp, feeling a quick, burning pain. It did not seem serious. She wrapped it, kept walking, assumed it would heal. Infections do not wait for assumptions. Within days, the wound was red and swollen. Within a week, it was leaking pus. Within 2 weeks, the skin had turned grey, and the smell made people step back when she passed. A nurse tried to clean it, but there were no antibiotics, no proper bandages, no time to rest. The unit kept moving, and Kate kept moving with them, because falling behind meant being left behind. On April the 16th, her unit was intercepted by a Soviet patrol near the Elbe River. The men were separated, marched east. The women were held in a bombed-out school, then transferred to a Soviet processing point, then handed over to American forces as part of a prisoner exchange. By the time she arrived at the American camp, she had been walking on the infected leg for more than 3 weeks. The gangrene had set in. The bacteria were producing gas faster than her body could absorb it. Her immune system was losing, and yet she was still alive, still conscious, still standing on crutches at an intake desk, still waiting for permission to stop fighting. Kate finished speaking, opened her eyes, looked at Hayes. "Now you know," she said. Hayes sat in silence, processing. A girl who lost her brother, her mother, her father, her leg, her country, everything. And she was still here, still breathing, still choosing survival. He thought about the letter in his jacket, the one she wrote before surgery, the one meant for a father who was probably dead. "Kate," he said, "the letter you wrote before the surgery, do you still want me to send it?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Can you read it?" "I don't speak German." "Then find someone who does and read it. I want you to know what I wrote." Hayes nodded. "I'll find a chaplain." The chaplain's name was Father Sullivan, an older man, Irish-American, spoke German from growing up in a neighborhood full of immigrants. He came to the medical tent 2 days later, sat beside Kate's cot, read the letter aloud, first in German, then translated into English for Hayes. "To my father, if you are alive, I do not know where you are or if you will ever read this. I am in an American camp and I am very sick. They are going to take my leg. I wanted you to know that I tried to stay strong the way you taught me. I do not know what happens after this, but I wanted to say that I am not angry. I am just tired. If I do not survive, please know that I thought of you and Mama and Heinrich at the end. If I do survive, I will find you. I promise. Your daughter, Kate." Father Sullivan's voice cracked on the last line. He folded the letter, handed it back to Hayes. Hayes looked at Kate. "You still believe you'll find your father?" "No," she said quietly.
Then why did you write it? Because when I wrote it, I believed. And that belief was enough to get me through the surgery. Hayes felt his hands shake. And now? What do you believe now? Kate met his eyes. Her voice was steady, clear. I believe I will survive.
Because I have survived everything else, and stopping now would make all the pain meaningless. Hayes did not know what to say, so he said nothing. He just folded the letter, put it back in his jacket pocket, and made a decision. Kate was not the enemy. She was not a POW. She was not a problem to be processed. She was a person. An 18-year-old girl who walked on a rotting leg for a week because stopping meant death, who lost everything and chose survival over surrender. And Hayes would make damn sure she survived, not because of orders, not because of duty, because it was the right thing to do. May 8th, 1945. The war in Europe ended at 2:30 in the afternoon. News came over the radio, crackling, distant. A BBC announcer reading a statement from General Eisenhower. Unconditional surrender. Germany defeated. Victory in Europe. The camp erupted. Soldiers cheered, shook hands, embraced. Someone found a bottle of scotch and passed it around. Another soldier rigged a loudspeaker to play a scratchy recording of the American national anthem. The sound echoed across the processing center, over the barracks, over the intake desks, over the medical tent where Kate lay on her cot. Hayes stood at the tent entrance, listening, feeling nothing. He should have felt relief, joy. The knowledge that the killing was finally over, that he could go home, see his daughter, resume his life. Instead, he felt exhausted. Behind him, Kate's voice. Quiet. Was ist los? What is happening? Hayes turned. She was sitting up. Had been practicing that for days. Building the strength to hold herself upright without help. The war is over, Hayes said in German. Der Krieg ist vorbei. Kate looked at him. No expression. Ich verstehe. I understand. Walker appeared in the doorway, grinning, half drunk. Captain, did you hear? It's over. We won. Hayes nodded. I heard. Walker looked past him at Kate. His grin faded. Oh, sorry. I didn't. It's fine, Hayes said. Walker hesitated, then addressed Kate directly. Do you understand? The war is over. Kate looked at him. Yes, I understand. Are you relieved? Kate's expression did not change. The war has been over for me since I lost my leg. Walker's face went pale. He mumbled an apology and left. Hayes sat down on the stool beside Kate's cot. He meant well. I know.
Nay, it must be difficult, hearing them celebrate. Kate looked at her hands. No, they should celebrate. They won. My country lost. That is how war works. You don't sound angry. I am not angry. I am just here, existing. That is enough. Hayes wanted to say something comforting, something about the future, about hope, about rebuilding. But he had learned that Kate did not want comfort. She wanted truth. So he said nothing. They sat in silence while the camp celebrated around them.
The next morning, Hayes brought Kate a pair of crutches, rough wooden ones. Walker had carved them from scrap lumber, padded the tops with cloth. They were crude, uneven, but functional. Kate looked at them. For mich? For me? For you, Hayes said. It's time you learned to walk again. She reached out, touched the wood, tested the weight. I do not know if I can. You walked on a rotting leg for a week. You can learn to walk on crutches. Kate looked up at him. That was different. I had no choice. You have no choice now either. You can lie in this cot and wait for someone to decide your future, or you can stand up and take it back. She held his gaze, then nodded. Okay. Hayes helped her sit up, swing her leg over the side of the cot. She planted her right foot on the ground, gripped the crutches, took a breath, then stood. Her balance was terrible. She swayed, overcorrected, nearly fell. Hayes caught her elbow. Easy, small movements. Don't fight the crutches, let them support you. She tried again, stood, steadied, found her center of gravity, then took one step. The crutch slipped it. She stumbled, fell hard onto her right knee. Hayes moved to help her up. 9, she said sharply. I do it myself. She planted the crutches, pushed, dragged herself upright, breathing hard, face flushed, then took another step, and another. Hayes watched, said nothing, let her find her own rhythm. Let her. By the end of the hour, Kate had walked 10 feet. By the end of the week, she could cross the tent without stopping. By the end of May, she was walking outside, along the perimeter of the camp, slowly, carefully, but walking. Hayes watched from a distance, making notes in his journal. She is stronger than her body. I do not know if that will be enough. Mid-May, the camp began to empty. Most of the German POWs were transferred to larger facilities. Some were released under supervised parole. A few were held for interrogation. Kate was not transferred, not released, not interrogated. She was simply there, recovering, legally classified as a prisoner, practically invisible. Hayes asked the new commanding officer, Colonel William Pierce, what the plan was for her. Pierce looked at her file, frowned. We'll move her to a displaced persons camp once she's mobile enough to travel. When will that be? I don't know. A few weeks, maybe a month. And in the meantime, she recovers, follows camp rules, waits. Hayes felt frustration rising. She can't just wait indefinitely. She's a POW captain. Waiting is what they do. Hayes wanted to argue, but he had learned that arguing with superior officers rarely changed outcomes. So he walked back to the medical tent, found Kate sitting outside, folding bandages. You don't have to do that, he said. She looked up. I know, but if I do not do something, I will go insane. Hayes sat down beside her. They're going to transfer you soon to a displaced persons facility. Kate nodded. I know. How do you feel about that? She set down the bandage. I feel nothing. I go where they send me. I do what they tell me. That is my life now. It doesn't have to be. What else can it be? I have no family, no home, no country, no leg. What future do I have? Hayes did not have an answer. Kate resumed folding bandages. It is fine. I am alive. That is more than many can say. By late May, Kate had become essential to the camp's daily operations. She helped the medics sort supplies, translated when German-speaking prisoners needed medical attention, wrote letters for prisoners who could not read or write, organized files, cleaned instruments. Nobody asked her to do any of this. She just started doing it, and after a while people stopped questioning it. Walker told Hayes, "She's the hardest working prisoner in this camp, even with one leg." Hayes nodded. That's because she knows what happens to people who aren't useful. One afternoon, an older German POW, a former sergeant named Franz, approached Hayes, spoke in broken English. Why you waste resources on girl who is useless? Hayes looked at him. What did you say? Franz gestured at Kate. She was across the yard, on crutches, carrying a stack of folded bandages to the supply tent. She has one leg, Franz said. Cannot fight, cannot work hard. Why Americans keep her? Waste of food, waste of space. Hayes felt anger flash hot in his chest. He stood, stepped close to Franz, spoke quietly, coldly. Listen very carefully. That girl walked on a rotting leg for 3 weeks because stopping meant death. She survived an amputation that should have killed her. She learned to walk again in less than a month. She works harder than half the men in this camp, and she does it without complaining, without asking for special treatment, without giving up. He paused, let the words sink in. That's not useless, that's strength. And if you can't see that, then you're the one with no future. Franz's face reddened, but he said nothing, just turned and walked away. Hayes sat back down, hands shaking. He had just defended a German POW to another German POW, had just called her strong, admirable, worth protecting. When had she stopped being the enemy? When had she become someone he cared about? He did not know, did not want to examine it too closely. He just knew that Kate deserved better than waiting in limbo for someone else to decide her fate. June became July. Kate had been in the camp for 3 months. Her stump had healed completely. She walked on crutches with confidence and speed, knew the names of every medic, every officer, half the remaining prisoners. She knew which officers would listen, which ones would not, how to stay visible enough to be valued, invisible enough to avoid trouble. She had learned to survive captivity by becoming indispensable. Hayes did not know if that was resilience or exhaustion. On July 20th, Colonel Pierce called Hayes to his office. The girl, Catherine Muller, she's being transferred in 2 weeks to a displaced persons camp near Frankfurt. Hayes nodded slowly. She's ready, physically. And psychologically? Hayes hesitated. I don't know. She doesn't talk about the future, just focuses on today. That's probably for the best. She'll have resources at the DP camp. Food, shelter, maybe job training. She'll be fine. Hayes wanted to believe that. I'll inform her. He found Kate in the medical tent, organizing supplies, moving efficiently on her crutches. She had become so skilled that sometimes Hayes forgot she was missing a leg until she stopped moving, and the absence became visible again. Kate, he said, I need to tell you something. She turned, waited. You're being transferred, in 2 weeks, to a displaced persons camp near Frankfurt. Kate's expression did not change. I understand. They'll have resources there, programs for rehabilitation, job training, a place to stay. Okay. Hayes searched her face. You don't seem surprised. I am not. I knew this would happen eventually. How do you feel about it? Kate set down the box she was holding. I feel grateful for what you did, for keeping me alive, for giving me time to heal. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. She looked at him directly. You saved my life when you did not have to, when it would have been easier to let me die. I will not forget that. Hayes felt something tighten in his throat. You kept yourself alive. I just removed the part that was already dead. Kate smiled faintly. You keep saying that, but we both know it is not true. The day before Kate's transfer, Hayes brought her the letter. He had carried it for 3 months. In his jacket pocket, then in his footlocker, then in a folder with her medical file. He had not opened it, had not sent it, had not asked if she wanted it back. Now he handed it to her. Do you still want this? Kate looked at the folded paper, worn, creased. The ink slightly faded. No, she said quietly. Do you want me to send it? No, because the person it was meant for is probably dead. Hayes nodded. Can I ask you something? Yes. Do you regret surviving? Kate was quiet for a long time. Then she said, when I first woke up without my leg, I thought maybe it would have been better to die, to not face this, to not be broken. She paused. But then I realized dying would have been easy. Surviving is hard. and I am tired of letting this war take things from me, so no.
I do not regret surviving, even like this. Hayes felt his eyes burn. What will you do after you leave here? I will walk, I will work, I will live. Because that is what survivors do. And if you find your father? I will not find my father. But if he is alive somewhere, I hope he knows I kept my promise. I survived. Hayes stood, extended his hand. Good luck, Kate. She shook it. Thank you, Dr. Hayes, for everything.
The next morning, Kate left. Hayes stood in the yard, watched her climb into the back of a transport truck, watched her settle onto a bench, grip her crutches. She looked back once, met his eyes, nodded. Then the truck pulled away. Hayes stood there long after it disappeared, wondering if he would ever know what happened to her, if she would survive the DP camp, if she would find work, if she would build a life. He walked back to his tent, sat at his desk, opened his journal, wrote one line. I saved her because it was my duty. She survived because she chose life over surrender. I hope that is enough. August 1945. Kate arrived at the displaced persons camp near Frankfurt. The records show she stayed there until early 1946, then was moved to a rehabilitation facility run by the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration. March 1946. She was fitted with a basic prosthetic leg, crude, heavy, painful, but it allowed her to walk without crutches. Late 1946. She married a factory worker named Joseph Weber, took his name, found work as a clerk at a textile factory in Munich. Hayes did not know any of this, not until 1947, when he received a letter, postmarked Munich, addressed in careful handwriting. He opened it, read, Dear Dr. Hayes, I am in Munich. I have a